There are two programs right now in college football who are taking extreme approaches. There's everyone else who's fitting really in between, in the middle. Obviously, some of the haves and some of the have-nots, but they're taking a relatively similar approach. There are two programs who are taking wildly different approaches, and curious to see like who's taking the more extreme approach. That is obviously Deion Sanders of Colorado and Dabo Swinney out of Clemson. Both on other sides of the country taking very, very different approaches. Deion, this year, these are 2024 numbers, they have 44 transfers that have left the program this year. So between the winter and the spring portals windows, 44 guys have left. Now they've taken 34. On the flip side, Dabo's built a culture where there actually really isn't a lot of transfers out. There's been 12 people who have left Clemson. However, he has taken a pretty stern approach, although he did, quote unquote, dabble a little bit in the portal this year, reaching out to some offensive linemen to get in who didn't end up going to Clemson. But they have taken in 0 transfers. So they have radically different approaches. And this isn't really just in the transfer portal. This is just their whole approach to how they're building a culture, how they're running a program is very, very different. The transfer portal is just very, very glaring because we have Dabo on one end who says, hey, I'm going to build my team and my roster and my culture from recruiting out of high school. And I don't want guys who I didn't recruit out of high school. And if they didn't commit to us, then cool, that's great. I'm not going after those people. Deion is taking the approach of, I need guys now. I don't care who you are. If you're able to play, I want to take you. And because of that, and a lot of the other stuff that's going on in the program, there's getting a lot of people are transferring out. And obviously now a lot of people are transferring into Colorado. Deion came to Colorado saying, these people who were on the team said, hey, you guys got to enter the transfer portal. I want you off my team. You're, quote unquote, cut. I'm bringing in luggage and it's Louis. Well, we saw what happened last year, and, he did bring in some Louis luggage, but overall it was, pretty Samsonite. So we'll see what's going to happen. He's taking a very similar approach. In his class from last year, 61% of the players that were on the team last year are gone. So he is virtually building another brand new team, again, this year through the portal. 34 guys coming in from the transfer portal versus Dabo's 0. And obviously on the flip side, we got for high school recruiting, Deion has been very outspoken about not prioritizing high school recruiting. He has been on record being like, hey, if I go to Florida and I visit IMG and I don't visit school X, Y, and Z, now they're going to tell their kids, hey, Deion doesn't want you. Which, there may be some truth to that. But recently, what we've seen and historically in college football is that rosters that are built from high school recruiting and coaches who are maniacal about high school recruiting are the programs that win. There is the blue chip ratio that Bud Elliott puts out every year, and it's proven every year to be true. If your roster is over 50% blue chips, so 4 or 5 stars, that is the minimum requirement to be successful and to compete for national championships. Deion doesn't take that approach. Deion looks at people who are in the portal or maybe looking for something new or want to be involved in his quote unquote reality TV show, which Max Olson had a report on last week, where they had some players who had left the Colorado room say, hey, this was like a reality TV show. I didn't feel comfortable. The players were, it was the returning players versus the transfers in. It was just a really bad culture in the locker room. Obviously there's media flying around everywhere between Deion and between Shadur's media company. The two programs couldn't be operating at the more further ends of the spectrum than they currently are. It's not fair to compare on-field results from Clemson and Colorado to evaluate which approach is being better. Clemson just inherently right now has, Dabo's been there for over a decade. He's built a very strong culture. He's been great in recruiting. So they have a very, very solid foundation. Deion came in, scrapped everything from a 1-11 team, and is now trying to rebuild. They're just going about it in very, very different ways. Curious to hear your guys' thoughts on who has the most extreme approach. My opinion is that it's Deion, because year in and year out, he is dealing with so much roster newness that it's just crazy and must be extremely hard to manage from his side. So, in my opinion, that's the most extreme. Um, Obviously, I personally, I think Dabo was, I think he could enter the transfer portal, and like nothing is more evident than last year when Florida State plucked out Keon Coleman from the transfer portal, and Keon Coleman ended up scoring the winning touchdown in overtime at Clemson. He ended up, being the Florida State being the ACC champs and everything. Like, wide receiver was an area last year where Clemson needed, and they could have went into the portal and got Keon Coleman, but Dabo's approach to the portal and his approach to his program really doesn't lend itself to go do that. So again, they're very, very different approaches, very radical. And we'll see in the next couple of years how these things will pan out.